So if it wasn't obvious, I've been very OC brain rotted as of late, and it's led to the point where I'm like, I need more physical media of these characters. I think I need custom plushies of my OCs. And so I went to go and check, people who do OC plush commissions, and unfortunately that was like way out of my price range. Obviously, if you have the budget for these, go support those artists and what they do, because their work is incredible and obviously deserves the price that it has. But obviously I don't have that type of money. So I started to look around for some options until I just kind of sat down and went, hey, maybe I could make my own plushes. Obviously, I don't have like actual fabric made for plush making, so I reused some of my old clothes and just like snipped off fabric and then just kind of got to work. So I guess here's my really messy progress post on basically how that went for me, what worked, what didn't, and my process, kind of. As of right now, I've made 3 different plushes, and I think I want to go over all 3 of them, what worked, what didn't, and just kind of bounce off from there. Starting off, we have my first attempt, and this one I had like no clue where to find plush templates that were already accessible and easy to use, so I just kind of winged it. I watched someone else who was making a plush in a way that I thought would be cool, and so I just eyeballed all of the template work and made my own. But obviously I was not measuring anything, so I had no measurements and just kind of worked from there. And this was a lot bigger than my other 2 attempts that I would make later, but I think it was not very good, because obviously I don't know how to sew. So I had to watch a how-to tutorial on how to sew, because I don't really have access to a sewing machine on me. So everything that I've done up until this point is hand sewn, and I'm still working on that, but it's definitely been getting a lot better every little guy I make. So that in mind, this first attempt was just like set for disaster. And after I got to the point of stuffing this thing, there was a lot of problems. So let me talk about basically all of the things that didn't work on this first one. First off, obviously the templates were eyeballed and not properly measured, because I didn't have my own template, and that obviously led to a lot of issues with the way that the plush is designed, I guess, because everything was basically off. The head looks a little bit weird, the chin was too big, and I basically had to pin it all together to make it look decent with a safety pin, and it's just not looking good. I think my second problem with this one is it was just way too big, because after I finished it, I realized, yeah, this is kind of like a waste of my resources because of the size, and it's a lot harder to work with, I think, a bigger canvas in the sense. Not really canvas, because this is an OC plush, so I guess it wasn't like the right type of thing for my fabric, because my fabric is very flimsy. I think that's important to keep in mind, because this is not made for plush making. It's just clothing, so it's going to be a lot softer and a lot less firm. So that didn't work out, and I still love her, but it did not work. And I think my last thing was I didn't cut excess. I cut right on the line for these, and that led to a lot of really messy bits in the sewing, because again, I was really inconsistent with that, and it just turned out not too great. All those flaws in mind, this is all of the things that I kept in mind when doing my next attempt. First off, it has to be smaller. There's no way that I'm going to be able to make something like big and have it turn out properly just hand sewing wise. And of course, since I'm still practicing, it's a lot easier to use a smaller sizing, and it'll be easier to fix any mess ups that I make. Second, I need an actual template because I cannot eyeball those things. So instead I found a free template that I'll link in the description that I used. I just printed that out. It worked pretty nicely just using an average printer. I used the one at my library for that. And the last thing was I knew that I couldn't work with like sewing on the face because I was able to do a little bit of acrylic marker with the face, and then I tried to sew on eyeballs and it just looked weird. So I decided that the entire face would be done with just acrylics. With all of these things in mind, I got to work on my second attempt. And that one I actually have footage of, kind of. All I can say is there was still a lot of mess ups. But as of right now, I think it's one of my favorites because, I don't know, it was a lot of labor of love, I guess, for this. And working with a template just made it so much easier. So I guess it all worked out in the end, kind of. Obviously, my sewing was still off. Halfway through, I realized I did the head backwards, and everything was a mess. I had to sew a little bit the hair to the sides just to keep it in place and out of her face because I messed up on that too. So this was not immune to my own human error. And in the end, right after I finished sewing everything, I just kind of shoved a little magnet in there because I realized I wanted to make this next one that I would make hold hands with this attempt. And yeah, at the end of it, I did realize that the acrylic marker for the mouth just didn't turn out the way I wanted it to. And so at the very end, I tried to rub off all of that acrylic marker and just use a bit of thread. So all of this in mind, let's look back at what worked and what didn't on this attempt. First off, the head being sewn on a little bit backwards. The back side, I don't know how I did it. I sewed on the wrong bits. It just turned out so wrong. And of course, that's my own fault, and because I like to do things with my brain on autopilot, so I didn't really realize that until I was like halfway through and sewed everything on. This attempt also made me realize that I didn't really need to do the little slits on the side of the head because I was already kind of sewing over them, which is probably not the thing you're meant to do. And so I told myself on the next one, I would leave out the side head slits because I was kind of just making these to be a little bit flatter because I realized on the first attempt the head was just so heavy, and despite it being a chibi on these ones too, I didn't want them to sag so crazy. I also decided that I didn't really want to have such a large chin because at the end I really had to sew in the chin for this one, and I didn't really want to have to do that for the next one, so I told myself if I didn't have to add it, then I would not add a chin. So, yeah. And of course, on the last one, I also decided that I actually kind of liked the backwards head a little bit, so I might as well keep it for the next one. All of these in mind, I got to work on my last one. And this one is the most recent attempt, and honestly, I flubbed up a lot more on this one than I thought I would. Obviously, I'm still trying to figure out how to do it, but unfortunately, I don't have a lot of footage of this one. So I'll try to work with what I already have. But obviously, I don't have orange fabric, so I had to cut out already existing white fabric and then acrylic paint like a ton of orange on top of it for this template. And of course, I cut off excess, did everything that I probably could reasonably. So there was obviously a lot of mess ups, I think, on my end with the sewing on this one. A lot of it, I think I was rushing because my stupid, dumb brain decided it would be a good idea to sew some of this while I was at school. So half of the time I was rushing, and it just didn't turn out good. So there was a couple times where I had to do the head over again because I either sewed it on backwards so that way when I turned it inside out it would not look right. There was a couple mishaps with the head shaping. I realized I cropped too much off of the head because I accidentally left the head notches on even though I said on the second attempt I wouldn't add them. So there were many mistakes, I think, on this one, and that's mostly because of my own errors and me not taking into account my advice from last time. But obviously it turned out fine. There's still a lot of little pockets of white because I didn't realize that there would still be a little bit of excess poking out on this one. And obviously there was the many mess ups with the head, and even now I'm like not even sure what I'm gonna do about that. But at least the magnets work and they can hold hands. So a win is a win for me. I had to figure out where I was positioning the mouth because thread-wise it was a little bit weird and their head is a little bit lopsided. So figuring out that was fun. Not really. That's sarcasm, guys. A lot of it did not work. So keeping in mind what didn't work, there's so much that did not work with this one. Mostly just because I was messing up a lot. And yeah, I think what I need to keep in mind for this next one, or the next ones that I will do, because I know I'm going to be making so many more of these at some point, is I have to work on keeping my sewing lines very close together because there's still little bits poking out, and obviously because I didn't paint over the template itself, still little bits of white popped out, but that's only because these I had to color in. But I think it just was a very strong reminder that I need to keep up with that and not mess up as often. I think it just reminded me that I need to take my time with these and to not try and do them at school, because what was I thinking? And, make sure my brain's not on autopilot while I'm making these. At the end of it all, I'm sure I'm going to be making a lot more of these. I'm very satisfied with my progress so far for being someone that has never sewn before up until this point. And of course that came with a lot of ups and downs and everything. But, it was an experience for sure, and I'm sure I'm going to be doing a lot more of these just because I love them and they're so cute. Even the really ugly first one. Pray they never hear this one. Okay. But yeah, of course, if there's any things in particular that you want to know about my process at all, just let me know. I'll try to explain it as best I can. But yeah, that's all. Bye!